Well, it happened. Donald Trump unleashed the fire and fury of the American Air Force, and now we await to see what Iran does next. Crucially, how could this affect peace in the wider region of the Middle East, but also energy prices here in the United Kingdom? What are the next steps? Well, my name's Tom Harwood and this is GB News Originals. Remember to click that subscribe button to stay absolutely up to date in what is an ongoing and moving situation. Donald Trump surprised the world when he unleashed that power of the American bunker-busting bombs, taking out several sites across Iran. He explained how there were decoy missions of American planes that were sent to Diego Garcia so that the Iranians might think that the planes that flew all the way from the United States to Iran were perhaps part of a separate mission. Yes, these planes were refueled in the air in their hour upon hour long mission in order to degrade the Iranian nuclear capability. But now what is happening is something that is profoundly worrying for the world. The Iranian parliament has already voted to cut off the Strait of Hormuz. This is such an important trading area for so much of the world's oil. Everyone knows what happens to energy prices in the wake of the Ukrainian war. What could now happen to energy prices if Iran follows through with what its parliament has voted for and potentially shuts down one of the key channels for oil in the world? Could we see our energy bills spike? But more than that, could there be something beyond the economic repercussions that the Iranians are clearly planning? Could there be more terror? And by that I mean Iran clearly sponsors various terror groups around the world. They have proxy militants in Hamas and Hezbollah. They fund the Houthis that have been so profound in attacking international trade that's trying to get through to the Suez Canal in the Red Sea. So clearly what could happen is a wave of further attacks. The Iranians have already said that they want to have repercussions for the Americans. There are questions too in terms of whether or not there'll be repercussions for America's allies. Could Britain, which does have bases in and around the region, could Britain be attacked as well? We know that Iranian terror attacks have been foiled in the United Kingdom. Even this year, the security services announced the foiling of a major attack that was linked to Iran-backed groups. Could this new sort of front of the ongoing situation in the Middle East, could this direct involvement from the United States unleash something very worrying indeed? On the other hand, of course, there was a clear and present danger. The International Atomic Energy Agency had been assessing the uranium enriching process in Iran. They were saying they were enriching uranium only for civil nuclear projects, just for nuclear power. But here's the thing. If you enrich uranium just for nuclear power, you need to enrich it to 3.5, maybe 4%. What was Iran doing? Enriching uranium up to 60% and beyond. Now, there's only one reason you enrich uranium to that level in your deep bunkers within the mountains, and that is for military purposes. That is to make a nuclear weapon. And this is the fear throughout the world. If Iran is able to create a nuclear weapon, or even several nuclear weapons, if it continued with its enrichment process of that uranium, that crucial uranium-235 being up to 60% of within their uranium supplies, perhaps beyond that, if they can create some of the most powerful and dangerous weapons the world has ever seen, well then what happens? Could they threaten the existence of the State of Israel? Certainly senior figures in Iran have already said that that is one of their ambitions. But what happens if Israel is bombed? Does that mean that the more than 80-year taboo on using nuclear weapons in conventional warfare, could that be broken? But more than that, if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, clearly Saudi Arabia would want one too. they've said as much. Mohammed bin Salman has said that if Iran were to get a nuclear weapon, of course, Saudi Arabia, the other great power in the region, would need one too. But then if Saudi Arabia and Iran have a nuclear weapon, would Iraq then go for a nuclear weapon? How much more would this proliferate across the Middle East? Suddenly you would have an incredibly dangerous part of the world bristling with nuclear weapons. This would be profoundly, profoundly damaging, worrying, not just for peace in the region, but peace in the wider world too. But let's zoom out for a second and see what exactly is going on in the United Kingdom. Because what has happened over the course of the last 48 hours has been somewhat embarrassing for the British Prime Minister. Clearly no involvement in the decision to bomb Iran, and now the British government is saying that they won't even say if this was a legal bombing raid or not. It's almost as if Britain is trying to step out of the playing field, not be involved in any way, and yet, as a P5 member of the UN Security Council, as the country that used to control all of the oil in Iran, as the country that used to be the biggest player in the Middle East, why is Britain so far off the field? Not even off the field in terms of not being involved in action. I'm sure that not many Brits would want the United Kingdom to deploy our military resources in that region at this time. But off the field in terms of not even being able to say whether or not we agree with the American action. Does that not sound like the most intense form of fence sitting? And is that really what Britain should be doing on the world stage? Sitting on the fence, being out of the field, not being involved and engaged in the way that we could be. But we are engaged in one way, and that is through what is known as the E3. That's France, Germany, and the UK. It's a group that was set up 2 decades ago to try and help negotiate away Iran's nuclear ambitions. And yet, this group clearly hasn't been achieving its aims to a great extent. Well, yes, there was the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal that was signed in 2015. But that was, of course, withdrawn when Donald Trump pulled out of it upon his election. Now, there were all sorts of issues with that deal, whether or not it was the unfreezing of assets that Iran had, the lifting of some sanctions, but it was supposed to, of course, keep the nuclear program from developing nuclear weapons. But here's the rub of the JCPOA. Even if Donald Trump didn't pull out of it in 2016 when he was elected president, even if America had stayed in that deal, it was a time-limited deal. Around about this time now, it would have run out. And there would have need to be further negotiations for Iran in order to stop that country from getting its nuclear weapons that it so clearly wants, even though its representatives deny that it wants those weapons. This is one of the problems with the subterfuge, with the trying to scatter different opinions in different directions, trying to avoid international scrutiny. And yet there has been international scrutiny, not just from individual countries, but from international agencies of the United Nations. It is clear that that uranium is being enriched to weapons-grade level. And the question is, will there be a negotiated solution or a military solution? As of yet, it is utterly unclear how much of Iran's capability has been wiped out by America's mission. The Americans have been very boastful, for want of a better word, about how successful their mission was, but until the dust has fully settled, we simply do not know how much capability has been removed. Clearly a very powerful and successful bombing raid, but you never know if such a raid has been 100% successful for much longer down the line. Of course, the Iranians want to keep everything under wraps, under the most intense form of secrecy. So they may still have some highly enriched weapons-grade uranium in some of those underground bunkers, inside those deep and tall mountains, those areas that only the American military has the capability of taking out. So what happens if the Iranians do still have some enriched uranium? What happens if they do continue, perhaps at pace now, to develop their nuclear weapons? Well, the Americans and the Europeans are saying that they must come to the table. They must negotiate. Donald Trump initially said that there was 60 days to negotiate. And what happened on day 61, after obviously no negotiated solution was arrived, day 61, there was that extraordinary Israeli bombing raid across military sites in Iran. And that's created a tit-for-tat situation. Ballistic missiles being sent from Iran to Israel. Israeli civilian areas being bombed. One Israeli hospital being bombed. And in response, the Israelis, of course, have been firing back. This tit-for-tat is continuing. The Americans have now been involved once, but it's hard to say whether or not they will be involved again. That is the genius strategic ambiguity of the Trump regime. But crucially, what everyone is saying is that negotiations must happen. And there's been two words that have come from the Twitter account, or I should say the Truth Social account of Donald Trump. And those words are regime change. Yes, it does seem that Trump, at the very least, thinks that if Iran does not come to the table, does not lay down its arms, does not say that they will stop trying to produce a nuclear weapon, well, could there be regime change in Iran? And is that actually a goal of Israel? Is that actually a goal of the Americans too? Of course, the original Israeli operation was named after the lion that was on the original flag of Iran before the Iranian Revolution, before it was replaced by the Islamic symbols that we now see in the middle of that tricolor flag of Iran. Could it be that the Israelis, although they don't say it publicly, are actually seeking regime change in Iran too, to topple the Ayatollah, to get rid of the IRGC, to move back to an Iran that perhaps the world was more willing and used to see in the 1970s. In the 1970s in Iran, you saw women going to school, you saw women going to university, you saw women in skirts and bright colours. After the revolution, you saw people shrouded up, women hidden from society, unable to dance on the street, killed in broad daylight for showing their hair in what was decreed to be a too Western or too liberal fashion. Could it be the best thing for the world for Iran to have its counter-revolution, to move away from the theocratic hellhole that it has become since that 1979 revolution? Quite possibly. But is the way to deliver that through external bombs? Can the United States really deliver regime change? Did that work in countries like Afghanistan? Did that work in Libya? It absolutely didn't. When it comes to regime change, that has to be bottom up, not top down. It has to come from the people of Iran. It's unlikely that we're going to see that in any short order, but huge goings on clearly at this moment in time. We're going to keep an eye on that energy price. We're going to keep an eye on any further raids and, crucially, on any further retaliation from the Iranian regime. It's a dangerous time in the Middle East. It's a dangerous time, frankly, in the wider world. But I want to know what you have to think on this. It clearly has split some of the MAGA movement in the United States. Some say, like Tucker Carlson or Steve Bannon, or Marjorie Taylor Greene, that Donald Trump should not have done this action. Others, of course, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, many people around Donald Trump have said that this was exactly the right thing to do because the most dangerous thing would be Iran getting their hands on that nuclear weapon. What side do you fall on? Do get involved in the comment section below. And again, do remember to subscribe to the GB News YouTube channel as we follow this dangerous time in world affairs.